What's going on, fellow alchemists? Welcome to Astrology. My name's Sam. Today we're talking about Venus in the 8th house and how you can go about interpreting that in your chart or the chart of others to get a more accurate reading. So let's just get straight to it. So, Venus in the 8th house. What does Venus in the 8th house represent? Well, what does the 8th house mean in your chart? The 8th house resembles or has to do with the concepts of transformation, the concepts of possession, the concepts of treasure, and your things that are hidden within the 8th house. So these are the things you cannot see until they reveal themselves. And more importantly, death and the sexual act. Not the sexual activity in the sense of sexual creativity and the enjoyment of it, but the initiation of sex. So how you go about initiating the process of copulation, of reproduction, etc. All is done here in the lower root chakra in Scorpio, or in the 8th house, because Scorpio rules the 8th house. So when you have Venus here, oh boy, this is the atypical Venus. This is not a Venus where you have her being very happy. This is not where she exalts. This is actually where she's in her detriment. That's what we call it in astrology. When a planet is in their detriment, it means that the energies struggle to exhibit and express themselves here. At least that's what everyone will tell you. I'm of the belief that actually in Scorpio, when Venus moves into the 8th house, which is ruled by Scorpio, Venus comes in with martial energy. Remember, Mars rules Aries, which is the sign of the soldier. And Scorpio and the 8th house represents the sign of the military. So when Venus comes into this, we have the goddess of Babylonian antiquity, the pantheon, Ishtar. This is Ishtar, who was the goddess of both political power, the goddess of war, and the goddess of fertility, and dark, rich, raw fertility. So in my personal opinion, Venus doesn't struggle here. It's just the Venus that we're so used to seeing, in particular when you see it and hear about it in the Vedic astrology, which is Eastern astrology. They always say Venus is in her detriment here. But she's not. And the reason for that is because in Vedic astrology, to be Venetian, to have feminine energy and come out into the world is to be caring, to form partnerships, to form relationships. Whereas Venus in Scorpio or in the 8th house represents deep, deep, tumultuous turmoil, but through that, transformation. Venus here is going to transform the native, the person who has Venus in this position, and the person that this person results in having a relationship with. There's no thin line here. You can't come into Scorpio or into the 8th house and have a light conversation, because you're doing yourself a disservice and you're doing the sign a disservice. This is not about light topics here. This is about death, possession, sex, So when you have Venus coming into this sign, you have a Venus that is here to transform the very construct of what we term as relationships. This is not going to be your standard relationship. This is going to be a relationship, or this is going to be a person who comes into your life, or this is going to be you going into somebody else's life, and you are going to completely leave a mark. It doesn't matter if that mark is good or bad, but in the end, it will transform both of you. And it will definitely, if you have Venus, and I'm speaking from experience here, if you have Venus in the 8th house or in your 1st house, or if it's underneath the sign of Scorpio, you are going to be transformed. So the whole purpose of Venus here is where she breaks down that image, that feminine image of light, general personality, the genuine article type of Venus, the Venus that's just nice to everyone. She breaks that down. It's done. We finished. Libra was the last time we saw even some sense of the commercial idea of what Venetian feminine energy is. And she comes into Scorpio now. She comes into the 8th house now. That scorpionic energy which emanates and comes out from the 8th house into the world through you. She comes here and she completely goes to war. She breaks herself down. Scorpio is about decay. It's about decaying. When a body dies, it rots and then it decays. But through that transformation, because that decay gives back, it builds, it acts as the biodegradable chemicals and the bioagents in the soil, and things spew from it, fungi things, you know, things to do with fungi or plants, animals, all these things which seem so gross when you think about it, but actually when you give the time to meditate on it, you realize the beauty of it. And that's what Scorpio and the 8th house is. And when Venus comes into this position, she is not debilitated. In fact, this is where pretty much every planet usually changes its general expression, except for Mercury and except for Mars. Because Mercury is the only god that can go into the underworld and come out at his own volition. So Mercury can do it anytime he wants to, right? But when you have all the other planets, they all have to go through transformation here. They all have to decay specific aspects of themselves and purify themselves, which is a tumultuous and absolutely chaotic period. So basically, any planet that comes and sits in the 8th house or under the sign of Scorpio is going through a tumultuous period of transformation. It's breaking itself down and it's purifying itself to go again into the next sign, which is Sagittarius. So Scorpio and the 8th house represents the stage where we are our most aware of both dichotomies, the dichotomy of the individual personality and then the collective personality. We're very aware of this. That's why it's so hard to let go of things. This is the sign of the disciple. Remember, the 8th house and Scorpio represent the sign of the disciple. This is where you're learning to let go. That's why it's about death and possession. You possess things, but either way, it's transformed, because the only thing that is constant is that everything changes. I repeat that. The only thing that's constant is that everything changes. And that is what Venus in the 8th house brings into your life. Your relationships are never constant. They will change and they will transform you. And it will be real. So, fellow alchemists, I hope you really enjoyed that one. Please don't forget to subscribe, drop a like, comment down below if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time when I do Venus in the 9th house. Until then, take care.